We are live. Good evening. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sunil Dasgupta. I'm a candidate for the Montgomery County Board of Education. I'm a parent of 3 MCPS students and a longtime educator in the county. Today, we are meeting as we have the last few Thursdays. And today, we're going to do the back to Zoom or back to school edition of the Thursday parent-teacher chat, depending on how you felt about this week. I hope if you are watching, you will share it out. You will maybe start a watch party, grab a beverage, ask questions, or provide comments. I will try to monitor your comments. If I'm looking away from the camera a little bit, I'm usually trying to see if there's a question you're asking us, and if there is, I will read it out to the group and ask for their reaction. Today we are joined by 2 high school students and 1 elementary school student, and two parents from various parts of the county. So let me start at the top. In my top left is Jared Thorough, who is an elementary school teacher at Barnsley Elementary School, which is our home school where we live in Aspen Hill. Going down below Jared, also to my left is Carrie Paulson, who is a mom of 2 kids, 1 high schooler, one 9th grader, in fact, right? So we'll talk about transitions, and a 5th grader who she actually pulled out of MCPS this year because I think of all the uncertainties associated with virtual learning. Carrie just told me also that she has been substitute teacher in MCPS for 3 years in the past, which is, there's a huge shortage of substitutes. If you have the skills to be a substitute, please sign up because it is always helpful. And, I think there's going to be a substitute shortage for a long time. And below Kevin, Carrie on the screen is Kevin Schindel. Kevin is a social science teacher, and he leads the research seminar for the CAPS program at Blair, and is the sponsor of the Student Government Association at Blair. And Kevin is a mind-bending thinker about education, and I really appreciate that about him. And to his right is Sarah Lales, who is a neighbor and a high school theater teacher at Richard Montgomery, and she has a child also in NCPS, so parent and teacher, right? So a big part of it is, how do you teach when you have kids, when you have to take care of kids? And that's a big question for a lot of teachers. And just below me is Jose Contreras, and Jose is a parent of 2 kids. Jose, tell me the schools and the grades, please.
So my oldest is in 2nd grade in LFI program at Waters Landing Elementary School, and my daughter is actually finishing up her Montessori curriculum and doing kindergarten at Butler Montessori.
Good. So we have to get everything fixed before she goes to MCPS.
Absolutely.
So thank you all for being here. Let me start with the person that perhaps, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I thought, let's start. Should we start with elementary school or should we start with high school? Elementary, right? Because they come first. Jared,
Yes.
So tell me so you teach 3rd grade. What has been your experience for this week? What worked? What didn't work? Tell us.
Well, I was talking to someone earlier, and we were kind of saying that a lot of the good things about teaching, the things that make teaching awesome, are still there, like connecting with the kids, learning about them, social emotional learning type stuff, read alouds, like all the fun stuff that you want to do when you come together with a group of students, making connections with the parents. The difficult part has obviously been the separation and just the technology. It'll be little things like, I'll be like, okay, we're going to work on, math lesson 3 problem set. And someone is like, what page is that? And I don't have any of the student copies of the books. So the students have to find the problem set, and then, hold it up to the screen or like say the page. So something that could have taken, 30 seconds in the classroom is dragging out. And that's just one example. Some of the technology, as far as like turning in quick little assignments or written responses, has been taking a long time, so which becomes frustrating. But the kids are so gung-ho and just, I think, excited to connect, that they're really putting in the effort and helping each other out, helping me out with technology. It's kind of funny. They're like, no, Mr. Thoreau, you got to do this. So it's been good. I mean, the past 3 days have felt like 3 weeks. And I feel like I really know the kids pretty well already. And I just wish we could all, be together in the classroom, obviously. But it started off pretty good, with some technology challenges for sure. You're muted, Sunil. You're muted. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So Jose, I thought you have a child closest to Jared's grade level. Do you want to speak a little bit about but you said your child is in LFI, right?
Yes.
So how is that? How is that going?
It's going okay. I would probably say with the specials, it's probably toughest on them because the curriculum is already modified to deal with a lot of their accommodations, and a lot of their accommodations really require some of that in-person assistance, and really the structure of being in a classroom and understanding the difference between, oh, I'm at home, I'm going to play, and also just being able to be present in the room with the teacher, as opposed to having to reconcile being on a Zoom and they're only, half an hour sessions at a time. But just imagine you have a 7-year-old that has to learn to have the attention span of connecting to a screen when they really crave the structure of the classroom. So it's definitely been a challenge. So it requires us as parents also to just be even more vigilant, to make sure that they stay on task, make sure they're not playing with the mouse pad or with the touch screen, things of that nature, and that they're really focused on what the teacher's trying to say. So it's been difficult, but I would say it's not any worse than I was expecting. I've actually been pleasantly surprised at how much better it's gotten since the spring. So there's been, I think in the spring, it was very much crisis mode of we've got to continue education and let's scramble. Whereas now, for example, the 2 sessions that happen are kind of like the core sessions, but now they're adding PE, and we had a little bit of a technical challenge to what Jared was saying, right? There's some technical challenges. We weren't able to do the PE class today, but the fact that they are planning to do PE over Zoom is a little, it's encouraging, and that they're also looking to try to do some of the interventions and some of the extra services also through Zoom. You can't do all of it, obviously. Like, you can't really do physical therapy, occupational therapy, kind of like as you're telling someone through the Zoom can be difficult. But the fact that we are starting to make that attempt is a huge change from last spring.
Great, thanks. I would take that as an improvement over over where we are where we were before. Sarah, how is your? I mean, you have a young one as well as teach. So tell us about your students, about your children, and how you're balancing.
Yeah, sure. So my son is 7, and I think it's important, and I feel comfortable disclosing that he was diagnosed with ADHD back in February. The spring was a disaster for us, for him. I felt like I did some of the worst teaching of my life in the spring because I had to basically be his paraeducator, and that was only for 45 minutes of the day. So there was a lot of angst surrounding the start of the school year for our family. We have a 2.5-year-old also. So, I was worried about what teaching was going to look like for me online, and I was really worried about what it was going to be like for him. And we had talked with other parents in our neighborhood about doing a pod, but like a parent co-op pod, not like hire a teacher and all that. And that didn't come to fruition for like lots of different reasons, which were totally understandable. And we looked at some options. Kids After Hours is doing the hubs, but we can't afford that because we put our 2.5-year-old back in daycare, because we both work full time. So I knew that I could not teach and be my best self with both of them here. And we did keep our older son home the first day to address any technological problems that he might have run into. And it was awful. It was really, really awful for him. My day as a teacher was amazing. I'm high school, so I'm 9th grade English and theater, and so all levels of theater. I had almost 100% attendance in every class. I felt real connection with the kids. We're focused on community building right now, not content. I have felt really good about the week. I mean, a lot of things that Jared said, I would just echo those same things. The kids are there. They want to connect. They're seeking connection and clarity. They're excited to be there. And so it's exciting to be there for them. And we made the choice for our older son to put him in a program at a virtual learning hub at Boys and Girls Club in Germantown. It's incredibly affordable. They oversee and facilitate their learning. He's got a counselor who is assigned to him. They wear masks all day. It was a huge conversation in our house, but everyone's mental health was suffering. So he has been really happy there and productive and self-sufficient, and we've all been happy. And that's what we're doing right now. And that's what's working for our family. And I've been doing some good teaching, and I don't think I could be doing what I'm doing and overseeing his learning. Somebody would have to quit their job. And that's one or the other of us. And I don't think it's fair to ask either of us to do that. So we're seeking solutions that are affordable, and we have a lot more means than a lot of other families. So I'm seeing it from all sides, and it's hard. It's hard, but it's been a really fulfilling and gratifying week in a lot of ways too.
Can I ask you what the setup at the Germantown Center is?
So I found out about it on the MoCo Parents Facebook page. And I mean, I won't lie, the price attracted me. It's $75 a week. So it's very affordable, and it's all day. And because they are affiliated with National Boys and Girls Club, they probably get a good amount of funding. But it's like my younger son who just went back to daycare. It's the same. They go in with their masks. The parents don't go in. Tent check at the door. They put them in rooms based on age, and they all have their own table, and they're socially distanced the whole time. There's staff that come in and supervise and help them with any technological issues that they might have. There's an athletic director. There's a guy who runs the center. I was in touch with him before we even sent Jude. I spoke to them in person. I get good feelings, and all the reviews online are great. So I mean, it's working for us right now. And I feel like he's safe there too.
That's good. That's excellent. Carrie, how is your transition?
Oh, it's been pretty good. My son, of course, ninth grader incoming, was very disappointed. He really wanted to go be a ninth grader at this high school. And he's an extrovert, so he is definitely missing talking to his friends. He has executive functioning issues, no diagnosis or anything. So it's actually, I like knowing what he's doing. I can keep better track of him. And I must say, I'm super happy that everything is on one platform. I was able to click on the calendar and see all the work that he had due. Interesting transition to high school. He had work that he had due that he had no idea that he was due. I mean, he always does, but he really had no idea. Because he had a poem due today and he doesn't have the class till tomorrow. So he just could not conceive of the idea of turning that in before the class. So that has been interesting. And he doesn't like mom being there. And I try to give him some space, but I mean, our house is only so big. I can't just, he wants to be in the living room. So I walk by or whatever and, oh, don't listen. And I'll say, why aren't you paying attention? Get your camera on. I'll say, no, get out of here. So that has been hard for him. It's been great for me. From what I've seen, the teacher.
Carrie, we're missing you.
Trying to get the kids engaged, trying to get into it, get to know the kids, which is actually one thing he hates. Today, his weightlifting class, which I took a picture of him doing weightlifting class, laying on the couch with his computer on his chest. They were getting to know the kids. And he got really upset because one of the kids had turned in the work, which was a virtual walker of like your favorite things, your favorite movie, your favorite food. And the teacher popped it up on the screen and showed this kid's work. And Eric, my son, didn't know if the teacher had permission or not, or had asked or not. And so he said, well, I'm not going to turn mine in because I don't want him showing anybody what I'm all about. He said, why do these teachers want to know everything about us? They don't need to know anything about us. So I guess he's more private than I would be because I just tell everything. I didn't see a problem with it, but when he said it, I'm like, oh, I can see how some kids would really not like that. And I noticed in his English class, they were supposed to do 6-word memoirs, and they were all posted publicly. I was able to read them all. And most of them were like sitting in a room on Zoom all day. But a couple of them were like, I have no friends. I hate life, so it's like, ooh, that's a little scary to have just such vulnerability available to anybody with this login. So I log in on his computer. I have no issues.
We should talk a little bit about privacy at some depth in just a bit. But Kevin, how's your first week been?
It's been rough. It's been really, really rough. I feel like, I try real hard and always have developed a rapport and a relationship with the kids from the very beginning. I'm somebody who's had the same day one routine for 20 years. I pass them out a piece of paper. They answer some open-ended questions about the quality of their education. My favorite question, how do you know what you think you know? And they sit there and they mess with these questions for a good half hour. And in that half hour, I take attendance, and then I spend the time memorizing all their names so that by the end of that first day, I know all my students by face and name. You can't do that now, right?
Why not?
Their names, well, because their names are right up there. We're not going to wait.
You still have to memorize them.
You still have to memorize them, right? And that's important. But trying to figure out what of the old repertoire and skill set transfers to the new format is really difficult, and so having a set routine, and I'm not one who's married to routines or tradition, I change it up pretty much every year, but I just noticed in the first couple of days, and this is a very thin slice of the week, in my upper level classes, pretty much all the cameras are on. The kids are engaged. They look engaged, but in a physical space without the, luxury and privilege of seeing the nonverbal communication and really just kind of being with kids. You don't know what's going on the other side of the screen, right? And so I'm confident, you know, there's, even in my 9th grade history class, there was good banter back and forth among students. One student said this is more interaction than he'd had in any of his other classes. So I'm okay with that. But then there's the other end of the spectrum. And I've talked to teachers who will have a class of 30 and not a single camera on, and no participation at all. And for 60 minutes, you know, you're just kind of wondering who's on the other end, if anybody's on the other end, and trying to deliver some content. And so, you know, I think it runs the full spectrum. I applaud Jared and you know, really getting in, and that's what we have to do, right? We have to get to know the kids, but man, this is really, really challenging. And I think that this could go one of two ways. You know, the newness of the situation. I had one teacher I was talking to who said she was really concerned because, you know, there were just no cameras on, there's no interaction. And I said, you love kids, they love you, give it a couple weeks and those cameras will be on. And you know, so that could happen. Or, you know, maybe the newness of the situation, because I do think that the kids are looking to reconnect with peers, reconnect with, you know, school, and just kind of get in some kind of routine. I hope that the excitement that those kids brought, you know, with them this week, I hope that continues. I have some concerns. I think this is going to be a really, really challenging thing, and especially from an equity standpoint. You know, I think we have thousands of kids in this county who will not be able to access what we're doing. And so, no, I don't remember if we talked about this last time, but, you know, the school board's got some decisions to do as far as grades go, because more than ever, a grade is going to be a reflection of a student's privilege and the ability to sit in a room quietly and have a steady, you know, Wi-Fi connection and all these things. And we know that we have tons of students who don't. And we're not going to fail those kids. We can't fail those kids. We already have, right? And to an extent, maybe we always will. But, you know, whatever we can do to, you know, to help out our most marginalized, I think is critical.
So I know you raised the question, whatever we can do. Let's try to answer the question. What can we do to help to help the kids that we don't reach? What is it that you want done? And I want everybody to address that. But we'll start with Kevin because you brought it up.
Well, what do? You continue to try and make those home contacts. You continue to reach out, right?
Is that happening or not? I mean, I thought that was happening. That was a promise.
It is it's happening, but, you know, that there are some schools that are so overwhelmed with the needs, right? We know this in Montgomery County. It happens. I live in Howard County. It happens in every county. Right. Certain schools have the majority of the needs, and other schools have not a single need, right? So when it comes to making parent contacts, the schools that have 40, 50% farms rates, that's an incredible burden on that staff, right? Whereas the other schools, you know, they don't have that, and they can put their time into instruction or content. And so, you know, one of my big concerns is, you know, what are we teaching? We talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago, right? What's the purpose of what we're doing now? Because I don't think it's the same purpose as what we walked in with last September. It's not even the same purpose what we walked in with, you know, in last March. I think we're still kind of in crisis mode here. And maybe not as much as last March, but we have a lot of kids and staff in crisis, right? And so I think the more that we continue to focus on content, and I know I keep harping on this point, I have been for a couple weeks now, the more we keep focusing on content, when kids can't access that content, we're going to expand the gaps that already exist. And so I would like us to kind of focus on those things that are most engaging, right? I know a lot of us are spending some time figuring out the best presentation software. You know, every week you get 4 emails in your inbox every day. You know, try me. Hey, we're going to be great. We'll really engage your kids. And the more we focus on that, I think the less we're focusing on the kids that need it the most. You know, and so I don't know. There are no easy answers. But, you know, I do think that there are definitely things that we need to be changing course on here.
Right. on the email issue, honestly, I'm getting 30 emails a day across 3 kids. I'm not reading them. I mean, there's just no way that I can read them. I just be honest about this.
Right. And then, you know, as Jared said, whatever we used to do physically now takes 2, 3, 4, 5 times longer, you know, digitally. And, you know, that home work life has already kind of bled together because we're working at home. And so, you know, you have the potential. I see this with my wife now, who's a principal. You know, she works 12 hours a day at least, you know. And so it's rough all that time. What we have to be really, really diligent about what we're spending our time on. And I'm just concerned that some of it is, you know, too much of it is spent on what's going to help them pass the assessment in a month, you know, and if it has no utility beyond that, then what are we doing?
Yeah, but you know, the problem with that is that you can't hold teachers to that, right? But teachers are sort of, you know, subject to somebody else holding them accountable for those assessments. So in a sense that's a policy thing that we really, really need to attack. Who wants to take the equity question? I mean, what should we do? So so Kevin has 2 ideas, which is, one is to, you know, to think about schools that are overburdened with need. And I would say the natural solution to this is to move some staff from schools with less need to help out, temporarily at least, to help out those. And you don't physically have to go there. It's just a matter of credentialing them, right? And the second thing is to focus not so much on how beautiful you know, you can make the Nearpod, but how you know, how you're, you know, focus on the kid itself, which, you know, some would say that focusing on getting it right in Nearpod is a way to get to those students. But I want to hear from others about any sort of practical ideas. So we talk about equity a lot. What is it that you want to see? Jose has his camera on. Go on.
Yeah, well, so what I look at it from the way I work, right? I'm a delivery lead in my job. So my job is to deliver and to identify problems in the process that my teams use to deliver and solve them. And to what Kevin was talking about, right? We are in uncharted territory. And so there's a lot of unknowns. And the only way to get clarity is to experiment. And so you can't take an entire school year and experiment because that's a lost year. So one of the things that I would recommend is that we have to have small time frame based experiments to try things and then inspect that experiment and adapt. Like the thing we do in my job is always inspect and adapt, and we do it in like these 2-week increments because we practice agile. I think that is a great way for us to zero in on, one, identify the problems. When you inspect, you identify problems, right? Identify the problems, figure out the root causes to those problems, come up with experiments that we can try. And it could be that those experiments can be tried in different classrooms in different ways, and then coming together and saying, hey, this is what worked. This is, you know, one of the things that was interesting is, you know, it was mentioned that technology it's taking longer to do things digitally than it would be in person. And in general, that is absolutely true. But the reason technology exists is that it's also designed to help us automate things and do things a little bit faster, but we have to discover how to do that, right? To what was said, right? Kevin, I think you said that again, right? Like the routines that you've had for the past 20 years of being in the classroom, you've had to figure out how do you adapt that to this digital space. And that's one thing I got to say, you know, I am like very impressed with what my son, there he is actually, my son's good night, yeah.
You go sleep. You go sleep.
You go sleep, buddy.
You go sleep. You go sleep.
Yeah. His 2 teachers from LFI are now co-teaching together. The teacher that he had when he first got there in the spring, I guess almost 2 years ago, year and a half ago, that teacher and his teacher from last year are now co-teaching, and it looks like it's a bigger classroom because they've kind of combined them, but then they're able to kind of help out and coordinate and figure out some of the logistics. Even the technology, right? There's things that need to be resolved. So one of the other teachers at my home school, Brown Station, she did a quick video of your teacher, yes. She gave a video of what it takes to do technology, and she talked about having a Chromebook and a laptop because she couldn't see all of her students on one laptop. So she needed one to see the students, one to do the presentation and actually manipulate the screen. So those are some lessons learned, right? And I actually funny, I noticed that at my job too when I had to present something. How am I going to see my audience and all that kind of stuff? So there's all these logistics that we have to resolve, especially with all the new technology that we're dealing with. So my biggest advice is inspect and adapt. And I think also identify those populations that really need to be in the classroom or would benefit from the classroom, or that are most at a detriment from being in the technology, in this Zoom and remote kind of delivery, and start looking for ways to, I'll say it bluntly, like bring them back to the classroom. But because at that point you're making a cost benefit analysis of, okay, one, if we start prioritizing these groups, it's a smaller population. We can do some of the things that I think what Sarah was talking about with like the learning pod and the boys and girls club. Same thing's happening with my daughter in her school. One of the reasons why we felt comfortable, because it was a huge discussion about having her go to her school, is that is a smaller population, smaller classroom sizes, and they were able to spread out. So I think we're gonna have to innovate, and I always say this, in a very safe manner with some of these populations that need that classroom help the most, and bringing them first, taking as many precautions as possible so that they can get those benefits. And if we can also do it through technology, that's great too.
Right. Jose, actually, I think the state is going to force MCPS to do certain things. So check out, I wrote an op-ed in Maryland Matters. So if you search for my name in Maryland Matters, it comes right out, and I address this issue, right?
Awesome.
You know, the same way that you're talking about it. Sarah, do you have any sort of equity related concerns or some ideas about how to alleviate equity concerns, actually?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that we need to open facilities, schools now for the most vulnerable populations. And those would be kids who have parents who are essential workers, who cannot stay home alone. Those would be kids who don't have the technology, although I think that's less of an issue here because of like the, you know, but yes, kids who have IEPs and 504s, who do need special services, and kids whose parents need to work and they cannot afford to send them somewhere. For some parents, even $75 a week, they cannot do that.
I agree.
And it's doable. You know, it's doable in a safe way. Daycares have been doing it since when? Early July or something. So you can do it, and it's because it's fewer kids. It's because you can spread them out and you can follow safety. And I'm not advocating for bringing all the kids back now. That would be insane. But there are families, and mine is one of them, where we could not keep my child here and facilitate his learning without one of us leaving our jobs. And that brings me to the second thing, which is I think there's a huge equity issue happening with working mothers. I'm not saying all of the people who are maybe opting to stay at home are moms, but I'm going to say the large percentage of them are women. And that's a huge problem. I mean, we're looking at so many women who are going to have to just take I mean, when we did our Zoom, like get together to talk about the parent co-op, it was 10 people, 11 people. It was all moms. And these moms were saying, well, I'm just going to have to flex my hours. I'm going to have to take a step back. And my wife and I did not want to do that. You know, we are working professional women, and we had an excellent work-life balance going before all of this happened. And we have a child who needs to follow a schedule, who does better when he's in a facility, a facility, school, whatever. He is thriving there where he is compared to being here with us. And it's probably for a number of reasons, right? But yeah, no, I think it needs to happen because, and if you had asked me that a month ago, I don't know if I would have said that. But then I had to sit here and watch every person in my family break down crying multiple times on Monday and completely lose it. And it's like, people's mental health are suffering, and the kids who are already suffering because of the achievement gap are going to be those are the kids who cannot afford to fall behind. So yeah, I think making contact is really important, but I think there are kids who need to be there in person, and I think there's safe ways to do it.
Sarah, do you think those kids will be the first ones back?
I hope so. And I hope that MCPS they need to be finding out who those kids and families are.
See, my concern is they know who those families and kids are.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
I see them being the first ones back. I think it'll be a battle of political wills, and we know what parents win those battles. And I see that across jurisdictions, not just in Montgomery County, where, people say, hey, we want to get some kids back because it's an equity issue. And then as soon as you kind of say, okay, which kids? It's like, oh, my kid, I don't, I think, I don't know, that becomes a battle of political wills there.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's going to be hard for the board to make those decisions. Jared, you have any suggestions about reaching to kids that are not being reached?
Yeah, I definitely worry about that. This is only, I said 3 days, it's 4 days. And I worry about the kids who this type of education and this type of learning is unrealistic for. I know that I was a kid that would have walked away from the screen when I was in 3rd grade for 10 minutes, and I have a couple kids who already are shutting their screen off or walking away, and honestly, I don't blame them. And I think our job is or the way I see it, my job is to make it worth their time when they do come and they do participate, make them want to participate. And I would love to come back, and like people have been saying, definitely not everybody, but I think for certain kids, it's just unrealistic. And I'm struggling to think of, how to engage those kids, whether it's technology issues or just attention or executive functioning. They're 8 years old, and that's a long time. I'm beat by the end of the day. I just feel completely exhausted, and I'm kind of like over the summer and stuff have trained myself to be on the screen longer, but these are 8-year-olds, and I almost don't understand the kids who are able to do it, who are able to sit all day and stick with everything. So I just think we have to be creative, and like people have been saying, like put curriculum a little bit on the back burner. We've got coming from kind of higher up is like, okay, you've got these pacing guides you have to stick to. And I asked, the pacing guides haven't changed since it's been virtual learning. Like they're the same pacing guides, as far as I know, that would have been in place if we were there in person. And it's just, it's stuff like that that I think we have to think about differently.
Did you tell anybody about the pacing guides? Did somebody respond to you? Is there what's the internal kind of discussion around that?
So I just thought to ask today if they had been adjusted. I asked kind of one of like a core team member at my school, and they told me that no, they probably weren't adjusted. So yeah.
Carrie, what do you think? How can we reach kids from your perspective? And you talk to a lot of parents.
I do, and I don't know what a good answer is. My son went to a school, and my daughter did for a couple of years, a focus school that flirted with Title I. some months we were Title I, so we got extra things, and some months we weren't. And I mean, it's rough. It's tough. And it kind of made me sick to know, like, we were working our buns off to get $5,000 budget. That was our whole budget for the year for the PTA. And then I hear about this other school that has $100,000 carryover for their PTA. So I have never cracked the code, but, you know, I lived in the neighborhood with the kids, and in a lot of these families, there's a lot of kids, and the parents are working. They don't have time to sit and do all of this. My kids are very lucky that I can be here. Although I do feel you, Sarah, with the moms, because my husband is home too, but guess who's doing it all? Me, if that wasn't obvious. So I don't know. I wrestled with this, and the things that I see are, first of all, I saw that, you know, it says 50% of third graders in Maryland are not reading at a third grade level, but 35% in the state aren't reading at this third grade level that they're supposed to be reading at in third grade. Like, well, if 50% in Montgomery County aren't reading at this appropriate level in third grade, and 35% in the state aren't, are these levels even correct? Do we just need to revamp everything? But it would need to be, you know, much bigger than MCPS could do. That's one thing I've definitely seen when I was subbing. A lot of the work that they do is amazing, hard work that just seems kind of developmentally inappropriate to me. Because I did study to be a teacher. I taught high school many, many years ago.
And so our standards are wrong, is what you're saying?
I wonder, I mean, if 35% of the kids in the state can't meet the standards, are the standards correct? No, it said only 35% met the standards. I said it totally wrong,
Correct.
Which made a big difference. It said only 35% of third graders were reading at a third grade level. How can that be? I've been in the classroom, and I know that a lot of the kids can't read, but the teachers are working so hard, and I've seen the teachers work hard. I've seen the kids make these giant leaps, but they're still below level.
Yeah, I think there's I noticed this also in the workforce, right? There's almost a sense of denial of the situation. And until you get past the denial and start saying, no, our students aren't meeting these standards, you can't start the interventions. You can't start to solve the problem. And I think that's like the fact that we have kids that aren't reading at a third grade level that are in third grade, that's a problem. And it only gets worse the further up it goes, right? So we've got high school kids, for example, that are struggling to read. How are they going to really be able to excel in all of their other subjects? How are they going to be able to really function once they, quote unquote, graduate, right, from high school? Those are kind of the problems that I see. And I was too young to understand when I was in MCPS, because I am a product of MCPS, but I don't know if I don't know if there was that much denial back then. But I think it's been an educational question, right? Social promotion versus, you know, actually meeting those academics and having to retain students, and what kind of, you know, what does that do to their self-esteem and all. There's a lot of factors in that. But I think the bigger issue then is, aside from retention or being on grade level, below grade level, are we fixing the problem? That's the question we got to ask ourselves.
Well, I don't even know if I don't think you could get consensus on what that problem is, right? I mean, because I could describe the educational system. Our educational system is wildly successful at sorting kids into the roles that we expect them to fulfill once they leave the educational system. And so 35% of the kids, if they can't read, we've got roles for them. And I don't say this as I'm trying to sell you on this, but this is what we do in practice, right? Those kids that we withhold an education from, we got roles for them. They're not going to like them, But society says, you know what, this is what you're going to do. Those kids that excel, well, I think we've got roles for them too. And so I think, we need to take a really hard look at the standards, at the curriculum. And the kids will tell you, I can't speak for elementary school. All my kids are through elementary a little bit, and I don't think any of them would have really described their experience as boring. But secondary education is a different ballgame. Most of the kids will tell you their classes are boring, and that's the standard we hold them to, right? And teachers, Sunil, as you said, right? Teachers, we have this thing that comes down from above, right? These mythical characters above who say, here you go, teach this, and then your students will develop proficiency. And in so many ways, what we are given to teach, we know for a fact that it's harmful to the kids that we're teaching, as well as the way we're teaching it, right? And we've got, I'm with Carrie. We need to revamp and redesign the whole thing and take a look at these standards and where they come from. Why do we have, national standards or statewide standards or things like that? And it's deeply complex. I'm not arguing that every school gets to develop their own or every locality gets to develop their own either.
Right. And so the thing is really, we say that this is an unprecedented time, but we immediately follow that up with saying, oh, how can we return to what it was before?
Right.
Yeah.
That is, I think, as a
normal again.
Yeah. How can we get back to normal, get back to where we were March 12th, right? And the thing is, there is no normal to go back to. There is not going to be, I think, in that kind of normal to go back to. And so we are duty bound to examine all of these precepts in a way. Cameras. Let's talk a little bit. Can we just focus for 5-10 minutes on cameras and their role in the class, and the recordings that now your teachers are required to do as in order to have them for students that didn't attend, right? So as teachers, we want cameras to be on so that we can look for what visual cues we can, right, of students. And Jared in particular will say, for elementary school kids, this is super important, right? Because you want to be able to make some sort of visual contact, right? But there are so many kids that are, that live in homes that they don't want to show, or they live in, or they are, they feel like, turning their cameras on is like for them to be on. That's what my son told me. And he's in 10th grade, right? So he says, turning the camera, I don't want to be on for the camera all the time, Dad. I mean, don't make me. So you know what we did? So MCPS asks everybody for consent, all families for consent. So we did not give consent, but we told our kids and teachers, and their teachers, if you want to turn on the camera in order to be able to participate in class, go for it. And if as a consequence you end up in a recording, fine, we will accept it. But if you also want to turn it off, don't hesitate. I think that kind of decision parents have to make and say, I give my child the ability to turn it on and off. What do you think about that? Where are you on that?
Yeah, I mean,
Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'll just be quick. I think it's super important to have that conversation because it's two really like complex situations. On one hand, you've got privacy being recorded, all those issues. And then on the other hand, at best, as a teacher, I have like a two-dimensional, screen to interact with. And in the classroom, you're all over the place and you can kind of look over a kid's shoulder real quick, see how they're doing, pull them to the side and talk to them. There's none of that, in the Zoom room. I hesitate to pull a kid out into a breakout room, alone because of, again, privacy issues and things like that. So to those high school teachers, like I can't imagine that have all blank screens and they're just talking to names. I don't know how they do it. And I hope with time that I was going to say that the kids become more comfortable with the teacher, but then it's not even that. It's becoming, you know, accepting that you are being filmed and that anybody who has access to the film and class can go back and take a screenshot, or, you know, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, and what if you don't want, I mean, what if you don't, so somebody, a friend of mine told me a couple of days ago, what if a kid wants to ask a question that is sort of a stupid question, right? But there is no stupid question in a classroom, right? Everybody should be able to ask that question, but they feel now I'm being recorded, so I'm not going to ask that question.
So one of the things that they can do is they can type a chat just to, and they can do that. So I don't even like to watch myself teaching. That's what I hate the most about Zoom. And I'm like a theater major, you know, so I don't even like to, so I'm not going to force anybody to turn their camera on for all of the reasons that have been discussed here, you know. And also as a teenager, the last thing that you necessarily want at 9 o'clock in the morning is for every other kid in your class to be right there in your face and to be able to. So I do other things to make sure that they're there. I have them type responses to me.
Mm-hmm.
I have them do the hand raise. They can either physically raise their hand or they can do the little hand raise thing. So, you know, periodically in the class, I'll say, okay, just type your answer to me in the chat. And then I read them out anonymously. Or, you know, okay, and I'll ask the question, how many of you have improv experience? And now at theater, it is better if they have their camera on. So like today we did improv through Zoom, and the thing we were doing, you can't really do it unless you have your camera on, because it was like an activity where you had to watch everybody. But I think it's a little more understood with those kids that like you're taking a theater class, so you kind of have to see each other. So it's a different level of comfort. But I'm not going to force any child to turn on their camera. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
We're not, we shouldn't be, right? We're not allowed to. And I heard students tell me to this, you know, today that, yes, there are teachers that are forcing them to turn their cameras on.
That's right.
I'm absolutely opposed to any recording. I wrote a letter to every school board member. There's no good reason that we would be the only jurisdiction that I know of in this state to be recording lessons, you know, especially when they want some of the content that we want to push, you know, some kind of anti-racist, you know, content and dealing with issues of mental health. Those things are really, really complex and nuanced, and people need space to express themselves and express themselves incorrectly and maybe, you know, a little bit provocatively. And to have that recorded just makes no sense to me, you know. But the other thing is, and I'll go back to what Jared said earlier, it's our jobs to engage them, right? And so it comes back to the content thing. If all they're doing is you know, filling out the causes of World War I or World War II, and there is no engagement, then their camera's going to be off for the most part, because it's not something that they need to see or interact with. Those teachers that rely more, you know, like Sarah's theater, there has to be that engagement. There has to be that interaction that has to take place digitally, because it can't take place physically. And it's those things, you know, that really, you know, I think a lot of teachers need those. And when the cameras aren't on, it hurts. You get it. You can't make them do it, but you got to do something to just try and pull as much out as you can. I want to do a study on why kids aren't putting cameras on. I think, as Sarah said, some of them just don't want their face on screen at 9 o'clock. Some is the home thing. I wonder if we could do fundraisers. Sunil, you said that costs $5, right, behind you. Maybe we do fundraisers for kids that don't feel like they have a set at home, and we deliver them sets so that they can have their cameras on. Schools should do that massively.
What, you mean a virtual background?
A virtual background, or
to be honest, it doesn't even cost $5. It costs a bed sheet and to hang up a bed sheet. That's what it is. If you want to do it, I can put up, you know, a very easy guide to how to do it. It just needs you to put up a bed sheet behind you in a way that just blocks everything off. And once you have any color, you can use that as green screen. That's not an issue. Right. Look, the variability on the camera issue is so large that I have heard some teachers compelling cameras on. I heard some teachers say, when you have cameras on, even if you are at home, you can't eat or drink, which I find a little bit mind-boggling. What? Yeah, so let them do it. I have heard that some teachers turn off chat because they are afraid students will abuse it. So I've heard this sort of whole range of things. And so I've also heard now, and you talked about grades, Kevin, is grace before grades. That's a term that is being used a lot, right? So let me start with the first thing. How do you feel about, kids just getting up and walking, stretching, coming back? I mean, can you do it to encourage them to do it? I mean, I don't know. I mean, what about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of my first day. I mean, we are guests in their homes, really. This is a very personal, intimate thing that's happening, that we are there. Some of them are sitting in their bedrooms, and for me, they're young adults. If they need to get up and use the bathroom, they should get up and use the bathroom. If they need to get up and get a glass of water, I mean, I think you have to build that trust and rapport. And if people are turning off chat because they're being inappropriate, well, maybe you didn't build that trust and rapport and sense of community to begin with. And I think the first thing is that you have to find out what makes them feel that sense of community, what makes them feel safe. So the first thing that I did this week was send out a Google form asking, what do you like in virtual classes? What do you not like? What do I need to know? And a lot of them said, I don't like to turn my camera on. And surprisingly, actually, a few of them said, I feel uncomfortable when other people don't have their camera on. So I'm going to have to figure out how to reconcile all of that, because I want everybody to feel comfortable.
But hold on. So so you have a survey?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a form. It's for my kids.
But it's a survey, right? So in your class of X, whatever it is, how many people said, I don't want to have a camera on?
They haven't all done it yet. I have to go through and compile. I can do an Excel sheet, but I was planning to print it so I could see for each kid what their preference was, really.
Yeah, once you know, let us know, because this is exactly what we need to understand, to survey the kids and find out. So I don't know if you know, but I joined TikTok recently, and I asked this question. I asked this very question, right? Cameras on or cameras off? I got hundreds of replies, hundreds. And now obviously I said, hey, MCPS students. So, I mean, it's not like, somebody from Belgium could be responding, but I don't know that. But there's hundreds of responses on that saying, no, they don't want it. But we've gone ahead, and you know what bugged me really was that MCPS has now taken a position that so they are saying you could have your camera on, or you could and you could participate, or you could have it off and not participate. So the choice that they're giving us is participation versus privacy, and I think that is completely unacceptable. That is not a choice that should be given to us. That really bugged me about how they set it up. The reason and it's a false choice, right? It's a false choice because this need not have happened. They could have said, and worked with teachers to have pre-recorded sets of lectures for just the content part, that during the live period, a teacher could just queue up and run while watching the other screen, while watching the kids on the other screen. So it's done. I have taught online for years and years. This is not rocket science. The point is, they set it up because they were overcorrecting from the spring. There was no live instruction in the spring, so now they're overcorrecting, and now they've overcorrected to the point where, and you don't have the teachers on board. You almost have a labor dispute in the offing. So,
labor dispute. We're still at an impasse, right? Yeah, and we're all working without a contract here.
Right, and you create the situation, and it's totally a false choice. And now you're saying, oh, they can either participate, or you can protect their privacy.
You
Yeah,
know,
I think what the survey would also show is that some students are fine keeping their camera on in some classes and not others,
Right.
right? Students have interactions with each other that we're not privy to because we've never met these students yet. And I had a student email me, a couple of days ago and said, hey, I've got a history with this other person here. Please don't put me in a breakout room with them ever, right? And so, that all of these things get factored in, and it's so situational. It's, time of day, 9 o'clock, no camera. 1 o'clock, not so bad. I've got some food in me. I feel a little bit better. None of this is ideal. That's why I said, there's nothing like a classroom on fire with passion and engagement. This is, I don't even know if it's second best. It's the only other model we have right now, but it's not even close. It's not even close.
it's funny that we're having this conversation on cameras, because I work remotely and I work with adults, and we have the same debate: cameras on, cameras off, recording versus not recording. Because in the private sector, those recordings could be subpoenaed and then be reviewed. They become evidence and things like that, right? So there's lots of different concerns around that in terms of privacy and liability. The things that I would suggest is, number one, if any recording, I'm glad that they are going to erase them eventually, but security is one of the big things, right? Like, who can download these things, who can access them while they're there, right? There's some concerns there. What Sarah said around how can you engage the students with the camera off? Absolutely, we have to do that. We have some of my direct reports, they're parents with kids, so they're like, you know what, I have to turn off the camera because there's some disruption going on, things like that, but they're still part of the meeting, right? So there's ways to interact with that. Even with large audiences, it becomes really hard to interact with someone one-on-one, where especially I think for the older kids, where they can really engage the technology better and access the technology better. You can leverage that to spark engagement. Now I've kind of been talking a little bit about like all the reasons why cameras are bad there, but one reason that I can point out that happened today why cameras are good. I mentioned before, like my son's just so like curious about the hardware and touching the computer and stuff and being distracted from the classroom. Seeing all of his classmates, and that's why he's usually, by the way, playing with it. He wants to see all of his classmates. And so there was one point where the students were all listening to the teacher, and he saw them kind of, counting with fingers, doing this type of stuff. And he's like, wait a second, they're doing that. I need to focus. I need to go do that. And he started doing it. So especially for younger kids, seeing each other, like think about the classroom, right? Seeing that the other kids are listening to the teacher and following the activity got him refocused, and he started doing the activity rather than playing with technology. So there's good and bad with it, but I would say the thing that we need to do here, and what you were talking about, Sunil, where MCPS is mandating this and mandating that, we need to empower our teachers. We need to grant teachers and parents some grace and empower them to look at the situation and make a decision. I mean, these are people who go to school, get masters, and then they are basically told how to do their job. That's one of the things, and I've dealt with lots of teachers through different interactions. A lot of them go back to NCLB, and they're saying, oh, No Child Left Behind really started to screw that up a lot because it created all of these false mandates and requirements that teachers now have to teach to, and the freedom and quote unquote, the quote unquote freedom and joy of teaching kind of got sucked out of it.
Yes, I was a teacher before No Child Left Behind. It's a whole different ballgame now, and I would not go back in the classroom. It's very different. I mean, I made my whole curriculum, whatever I wanted to do. It was great.
We got a few questions, and I thought I want to bring that up. One is, so there are a couple of questions from Sumi Moses, and one is she's asking, outside of special ed, there are parents who work from home and are essential workers. So how do you decide which students go back first outside of special ed? What is the criteria, right? So to me, I would say reading below grade level or not being able to connect on the internet. Actually, not being able to connect on the internet is number one, right? And then go to, not reading below grade level. What do you all suggest?
I think those are fine, right? I think there has to be something, because if you put it out to the parents, there's not a parent in this county who would say, no, my kid's okay at home. He doesn't need to see anybody. And, everybody's got extenuating circumstances, and we all do. Everybody wants their kids back. We get it. So I think there has to be some hardcore criteria on, students who don't have access, students who require, IEP services, students on farms who need meals, things like that. That's the priority there. My concern is that we'll have people who will give lip service to that and then, try to hoard all the spaces.
Well, we need leadership. Absolutely. What anything else? The hybrid plan that MCPS announced in July, whenever it was, that said K through second and then 6 and 9, because those are transition grades. But that's 50,000 kids. How do you pilot 50,000 kids? I don't. To me, it's hard to know. And they don't know which teachers will come back. I mean, Jared, I think, might go back, and Sarah, you might decide to go back if it was possible.
I think there are enough teachers who would be willing to go back to make it happen. Now, in terms of who you decide goes back first, there would have to be some sort of very clear criteria. But I do think that there are enough teachers who would be willing to go back and teach in person. I do think
right.
So.
But then you also have an issue, right? You decide on the criterion of kids, and then you figure out which teachers want to go back, and they may not be matching, right? So you maybe a lot of 10th grade teachers wanting to go back, but lots of third graders wanting to go back. So that matching problem is going to be is not a small problem.
It was one of the reasons I said we should not spend any time wasting any time on planning to get back in the midst of this health crisis, because it's just wasted time. We want to look at something down the road, but I know systems were working on that in the summer. They should have been paying teachers to figure out how to engage their students more online, because we knew that's what we were going to be doing.
Right. I agree with you. I was just saying, I think the state is going to force us to do something.
Well,
and so we are going to have to do something. It's just, and whether or not you're prepared or not.
Is that a democratic procedure or a bureaucratic procedure? Because that makes a big difference. See, if it was based in democracy and getting input from everybody at every level, and then you get community buy-in, you get parental buy-in. What we have now, I think, is a lot of policy that's being dictated that doesn't take into account all those nuances. And I think that's a big problem.
But you know better than me that there are echelons of democracy, right? So in fact, that the state does get to dictate certain terms to us. Anybody else has any other criterion of who's first?
I think you have to look at parents who can't afford childcare, who have kids who need super young kids who cannot be left, because young kids are going to be left home alone. Would
you put them before kids that are reading below grade level?
I don't know. I don't know if that's up for me to say. It's hard to say. But and it's the fact that the elementary kids are on screens. I mean, my son today on the drive home saying that he's done the math. They're on screens like 6 hours a day. That is insane. He's like, why can't we just get copies of things to do paper work? They're on screens more than the high school kids are.
I agree. I totally agree with that. And in fact, I hope all of you and anybody that is listening is considering whether Minecraft time after school is what it does to their eyesight or to whatever else.
That's one reason I'm homeschooling my elementary school daughter. She just cannot be on screen 6 hours a day. I'm very privileged to have that option. And we're doing like a co-op pod thing, not with the paying anybody. My friend and I are doing it all, but she's, cannot be on screen 6 hours a day. That's crazy.
It is crazy. But if anybody can do it, it's going to be Carrie, by the way. I just want to say that. I don't have the patience to do any of that. There's another question. So a couple of other questions. If synchronous learning was so important, why weren't lessons recorded for each curriculum? I think, Sumi, that is the point that we are trying to make. That I think MCPS did not do that, lost an opportunity to have done that over the summer. They should have paid teachers and got them on board, gotten the contract stuff solved out, and then gone and actually did allowed them this time and space and resources to be able to do it. And that did not happen. I think that's a big criticism and a failure. Anybody wants to add to that?
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to experimenting, inspecting, and adapting, and really trying to learn this medium and how to leverage it. The synchronous, like online learning, it's funny, I finished my undergrad degree taking online classes in its infancy, and the whole point of like doing these synchronous meetings and having to like log in at this time and so forth, I'm glad that my son's core classes, it's only an hour a day, half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening or in the afternoon, and then specials here and there. But I remember doing more project-based assignments that you can do offline. And Sunil, you've taught online, so I'm sure you've probably done this more, like, writing papers.
I did it. I said this. You have to have more project-based learning. You have to flip the classroom. But, but I don't think anybody's listening to me, at least not until I get elected or something.
That's kind of one thing I was wondering about too. It's like, if I'm giving asynchronous type learning, how much am I putting on the parents then? Are the parents expecting me to be on with the kids the entire time? Like, we've sent out the schedule. Are they expecting that they're going to be on screen the entire time so that they can do what they have to do? And if I send them off to do an asynchronous project, which I would love to do and love to think about, am I putting it on them, or would they feel that way?
Depends on what project it is, right?
Sure. But just to manage, especially the kids who might have executive functioning, or, if they're working by themselves. It does bring up
some more of the equity issues, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I remember growing up, I was, I grew up in a poor family, and I was on my own. So like these group projects, like we had to do our dioramas and things like that. And I remember going into the classroom, and I could tell that some of my classmates, their parents did their dioramas for them and all that kind of stuff. Or seeing that they printed out their book reports on a computer, where like my parents were like, don't use a typewriter because it's expensive, things like that. We would definitely have to deal with some of those types of things. But I think the flip side of it is there's also equity issues with the synchronous learning, right? Because now they're at home. Are they going to be able to, like, I've had the luxury that my wife and I are both here, and I props to her. She's been kind of bearing the brunt of dealing with my son's classes, but we're kind of trying to share it, right? And we can share that responsibility. But what about single parent households? Or what about households where one of the parents has to go work? There's going to be equity issues on either side. So I think we've got to experiment and kind of really, to be honest, pick the lesser of two evils in a lot of these situations. We can't just say we're not going to do project-based because there's equity issues. There's equity issues in synchronous learning too now. So we've got to experiment and figure out how to mitigate.
Absolutely. I think, All right. So I have one other comment from Catherine Kirsch, who I think teaches elementary school, and she made your point, Jared, which is to say there's a lot of pressure around pacing, and she doesn't feel like they were afforded time to build community. And we should have, I think some districts have done this, which is to begin a little bit late, but give every teacher the ability to connect directly with every family. And I think it's different in high school, but at least at the elementary level, have every teacher meet with every family in the class for half an hour, explain to them that this is where this is and this is where that is, and if you do this and you'll get this, that kind of thing. I think we missed a little bit in terms of that. But of course, we are also under pressure from a governor who thinks that time's come. What high schools don't? Are you guys not held to pacing guides and things as much as elementary school? I'm just curious. I don't know.
I mean, we are, but I feel like I'm lucky to work with a team of really smart, collaborative folks who I feel like we do good stuff with what we have to do. I mean, I think also we're an IB school, so we're working within the framework of International Baccalaureate. So I think a lot of the philosophies that are present within International Baccalaureate lend themselves to project-based learning, focusing on the process versus the final product, putting the student in the middle. We've been making a really big effort as a 9th grade teaching team to include books where our students see themselves. We've gotten rid of a lot of the dead white guy authors, put it bluntly, and brought in a lot more authors of color. We stopped teaching To Kill a Mockingbird and replaced it with John Lewis's March Book 3 2 years ago. That felt necessary. But yeah, no, I mean, we are, but I also feel like we have the NCPS curriculum and standards that we're following. And then we also get, IB comes in to do their evaluation every 5 or 7 years. So yeah, we have a lot of standards, but I think that we do well. I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I work with smart, innovative people. So, but I can only speak to, my own experience with that.
Well, it's 9:30, and I wish everybody who has kids, teachers like Sarah and Kevin and Jared. I do. And I wish you parents like Carrie and Jose. And honestly, you guys are great. Thank you for sharing an evening with me and with others who've been watching us. We'll continue this conversation every Thursday. Next week, we are going to do reading and dyslexia and talk about and discuss around there. But we will do it every Thursday going forward. So I hope you'll all come back and have a great long weekend and a great new year. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was nice meeting
Thanks for
everybody.
hosting us. You too.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.